Have you ever wondered why the grand promises you make to yourself on January 1st dissolve into quiet compromises by February? The data is unflinching. Research suggests that over 90% of people who set ambitious goals for themselves fail to achieve them. They remain stuck, not for lack of desire or talent or intelligence. They remain stuck because they are living inside a prison of their own making, a comfortable, familiar prison with gilded bars. I know this prison well. I lived in it for decades. In my years building a tech empire, I had every external marker of success: the wealth, the recognition, the relentless forward momentum. But inside, I was a storm of anxiety. My mind was a chaotic battlefield, and I was losing. I tried to change. I'd hire trainers, commit to new diets, promise myself I'd be more present with my family. But every attempt was a short-lived sprint, followed by a long collapse back into the old patterns. I was rearranging the furniture in my cell, believing I was renovating the entire prison. The crucible moment for me was a burnout so severe it felt like my soul had been scorched. Stripped of my health and a business I had bled for, I was forced to confront the architecture of my own confinement. That's when I turned from the noise of modern self-help to the quiet, unyielding wisdom of the ancients, the Stoics. And I learned the fundamental truth. We do not fail to change because the wall is too high. We fail because we are chained to the floor. The chain is not made of steel, it's made of comfort. This is the great paradox of the human condition. The very safety we crave is the agent of our stagnation. This psychological principle is called loss aversion. Our brain is wired to feel the pain of losing something we have twice as strongly as the pleasure of gaining something we want. You fear losing your current predictable misery more than you desire an uncertain, but potentially magnificent, future. Think about the job you know is draining your life force. You stay. Why? Because the known discomfort of that job is less terrifying than the unknown void of starting something new. You fear losing the steady paycheck, the familiar routine, the identity, even a miserable one. You are clinging to the devil you know. But the Stoics teach us to ask a harder question. What are you gaining by staying? A little security, a little predictability. And what is the price? Your potential, your time, your one finite life. True wealth is not a portfolio, it's a mind that cannot be shackled by fear. It's the freedom to choose the hard path today for a stronger self tomorrow. So, I ask you to begin your own excavation. What comfort are you trading for your potential? What is the one thing you are most afraid to lose if you were to truly change your life? Once we recognize the bars of our comfortable prison, we must understand the material they are made from. The first psychological barrier, and perhaps the most formidable, is the familiarity trap. Your brain is not your friend in the quest for change. It is a ruthlessly efficient machine designed for one primary purpose: survival. And to the primitive brain, what is familiar is safe, and what is new is a potential threat. It loves patterns. It thrives on predictability. Every time you repeat an action, scrolling your phone the moment you wake up, reaching for a sugary snack when stressed, reacting with anger when challenged, you are deepening a neural pathway. Think of it as carving a path in a dense forest. The first time is difficult, you have to push through the undergrowth. The 100th time, it's a well-worn trail. The 1,000th time, it's a paved road. Your brain will always default to the paved road because it requires the least amount of energy. This is why change feels so difficult. You are not just fighting a bad habit, you are fighting deeply ingrained neurology. Your brain is literally resisting you. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "The universe is change our life is what our thoughts make it." This is a profound insight into this very trap. The nature of reality is constant flux, yet our internal world fights desperately to create an illusion of permanence through habit. We build routines not to master our lives, but to numb ourselves to the inherent uncertainty of them. I mentored a young software engineer once. Let's call him Alex. He was brilliant, technically gifted, but he had been in the same junior-level position for 5 years. He complained about his boss, the lack of challenging projects, the stagnation. Yet his life was a carbon copy, day in and day out. Same alarm time, same breakfast, same route to work, same lunch at his desk, same video games at night. His mind was on autopilot. He wanted a promotion, a change in his external world, but he was unwilling to introduce any change into his internal world. My first instruction to him was not to learn a new coding language or ask for a new project. It was to take a different route to work, to eat lunch outside without his phone. Small, seemingly meaningless disruptions. The goal was to force his brain off the paved road and into the undergrowth, to prove to him that he could tolerate the discomfort of the unfamiliar. It was the beginning of him reclaiming control from his own automaticity. When was the last time you consciously chose your next action, instead of letting habit choose for you? Are your daily routines serving your growth, or are they merely cementing your stagnation? I want you to take a moment today, pause this, and write down your most automatic behaviors from the moment you wake up. Just observe them. Become aware of the script you're running. That awareness is the first flicker of light in the darkness of the trap. If the familiarity trap is the pavement of our prison, the second barrier is the warden who patrols it, the identity protection mechanism. This is the quiet, powerful voice in your head that whispers, "I'm just not that type of person." It's the story you tell yourself about who you are, and it is the most powerful force resisting your transformation. Our self-concept, the identity we've constructed over years, functions like a psychological immune system. When a new behavior or belief that contradicts this identity is introduced, the system flags it as a foreign invader and attacks it. It does this to protect us from the pain of cognitive dissonance and the discomfort of the unknown. To change would be to admit that the person you have been, up until this very moment, was somehow incomplete or flawed, and the ego would rather be right than be happy. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, a former slave who became one of antiquity's greatest teachers, put it with devastating clarity. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. We often misinterpret this. We think outside events means a traffic jam or a rude comment. But your identity, the one you cling to so tightly, is also an outside event. It was built from the praise of your parents, the criticism of your teachers, the expectations of your peers, and the successes and failures of your past. It's a collage you've assembled, but it is not the essential you. The essential you is the consciousness that has the power to observe and change that collage. For years, my identity was the rainmaker, the aggressive CEO. I wore it like armor. It dictated my actions, my schedule, my relationships. When I burned out and lost the company, the armor didn't just crack, it disintegrated, and the man underneath was terrified because he didn't know who he was without it. The fear wasn't about the loss of money, it was about the loss of self. As I began to explore Stoicism, I resisted. The idea of waking up at dawn to meditate? That wasn't me. The idea of practicing voluntary hardship? That was for monks, not for a former titan of industry. My old identity was fighting to the death to protect its existence. The breakthrough came when I realized I was not destroying an old self, but liberating the true self from a story that no longer served it. Who told you who you are? Was it you, or was it a narrative you inherited? Think of the person who wants to become financially disciplined but constantly says, "I'm just bad with money," or the person who wants to be a leader but thinks, "I'm an introvert, I'm not a public speaker." These are not facts, they are sentences, and you are the author. You can write a new one. Is the story you tell yourself about your identity a fortress that is protecting you, or is it a prison that is confining you? We have the paved road of the familiarity trap and the warden of the identity protection mechanism. The third and final psychological barrier is the silent saboteur that ensures you never even attempt an escape. perfectionism paralysis. This is the all-or-nothing thinking that freezes you in place. It's the belief that if you cannot do something perfectly, you should not do it at all. It masquerades as a commitment to high standards, but in reality, it is a sophisticated defense mechanism driven by a profound fear of failure and judgment. It's the voice that says, "Don't start that business until you have a flawless 100-page plan," or "Don't go to the gym until you've lost 10 pounds first," or "Don't write that book until you know the perfect ending." It is a recipe for perpetual inaction. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a man who navigated the treacherous courts of the Emperor Nero, understood this dynamic intimately. He wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." This is a law of nature. To begin something new, something old must end, be it an old habit, an old identity, or an old way of thinking. Perfectionism denies this fundamental reality. It demands a perfect, immaculate conception, free from any messy endings or awkward beginnings. It is a demand for a result without a process, and the universe does not work that way. The process is always messy. The first draft is always rough. The first workout is always clumsy. The first sales call is always awkward. To the perfectionist, this messiness is evidence of inadequacy. To the Stoic practitioner, it is simply evidence of being in the arena. I once mentored a brilliant young woman, a writer named Sarah. She had an idea for a novel that was truly captivating. But she was paralyzed. For 2 years, she had been working on the first chapter. She would write a paragraph, delete it, rewrite it, polish a single sentence for hours, and then scrap the whole page. She was terrified of writing a bad sentence, of not living up to the grand vision in her head. Her obsession with the perfect start meant she would never have a finished book. My advice to her was radical. I told her to spend the next week intentionally writing the absolute worst, most cliché-ridden, terribly written chapter she could imagine, to give herself permission to be a complete and utter failure on the page. It was an agonizing exercise for her, but it broke the spell. By confronting the worst-case scenario and realizing it wouldn't kill her, she was finally free to simply write. She finished the first draft of her novel 6 months later. Are you waiting for the perfect moment? Or are you creating momentum with imperfect action? Perfectionism isn't a standard, it's a cage. What is this fear of being seen as imperfect truly costing you? I want you to identify one goal you've been putting off. Now, what is the smallest, most imperfect step you can take toward it today? Not tomorrow. Today. Recognizing the traps of familiarity, identity, and perfectionism is the critical first step. It is the act of mapping the prison. Now we must learn how to break out. This is not about fleeting motivation or hype. It is about installing a new operating system for your mind. The Stoics gave us a blueprint for this, a timeless framework for building an inner citadel that cannot be breached. It is comprised of 3 core disciplines. For today, we will focus on the first 2, the discipline of desire and the discipline of action. These are the tools that begin to dismantle the bars. First, the discipline of desire. This is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in all of Stoicism. It is not about suppressing your desires or living an austere, passionless life. It is about fundamentally reorienting what you desire. The untrained mind desires for external events to conform to its wishes. I want the market to go up. I want this person to like me. I wish it weren't raining. This is a recipe for constant frustration, because these things are not within your control. The Stoic practitioner, however, works to desire what already is, to want what happens. This is the practice of amor fati, a love of fate. It is not passive resignation. It is an active, powerful, and courageous acceptance of reality as it presents itself. It is looking at the unchangeable facts of your situation and saying, "This is the material I have to work with." Let's begin. During my burnout, my mind was a raging inferno of resistance. I desired for my health to return instantly. I desired for my business partner not to have made the choices he made. I desired for the market not to have crashed. This desire for a different reality was the source of 99% of my suffering. The change began when, through gritted teeth, I started to practice acceptance. My health is poor. That is a fact. The business is gone. That is a fact. This is my new starting point. The moment you stop fighting reality is the moment you reclaim all the energy you were wasting and can redirect it toward what you can control. This leads directly to the second pillar, the discipline of action. Once you have accepted the landscape as it is, your sole focus becomes your next move. The discipline of action is about doing what is required, not what is comfortable. It is about acting with virtue, purpose, and reason, regardless of the outcome. The Stoic is not attached to the fruits of their labor, only to the labor itself. The goal is not to win the battle, the goal is to fight the battle well. When you've been laid off, the reactive mind gets lost in the injustice, the blame, the fear. It's consumed by a desire for a different past. The Stoic mind, having practiced the discipline of desire, accepts the new reality and turns to the discipline of action. What is the next right action? Update my resume. Call one person in my network. Spend 1 hour learning a new skill. The focus is on the input, not the output. Are you spending your precious energy wishing reality were different, or are you using that energy to work with the reality you have been given? In your current challenge, what is the next right action, regardless of how you feel about it? With the foundation of accepting reality and focusing on our inputs, we add the third and final element of the Stoic operating system, the discipline of assent. If the first two disciplines are the engine and the steering wheel, this one is the driver. It is the faculty of the mind that interprets the world. The Stoics understood that things themselves do not harm us, it is our judgment about things that harms us. An event happens, and in the space between that event and our response there is a crucial moment where we assent, we agree, to an impression about that event. This discipline is about training yourself to give assent only to objective, rational judgments, and to withhold it from irrational, emotional, and fear-based ones. It's the crucial filter that distinguishes a real obstacle from a mere excuse. I had a mentee who was terrified of public speaking, a skill he needed to advance his career. The event was a scheduled presentation in a conference room. His initial automatic impression was, "This is a life-or-death situation. They will all judge me. I will forget my words and be humiliated. It will be a catastrophe." He was assenting to a story, a fiction his mind had created. Our work was to train his discipline of assent. I had him describe the situation with pure objectivity. I will be in a room with colleagues. I will stand at the front. I will speak words from a script for 15 minutes. That's it. There is no catastrophe in that description. By separating the raw data from the emotional narrative, he was able to see the event for what it was. A challenge, not a threat. What is an objective description of the challenge you're facing right now, without your emotional judgment layered on top of it? These three disciplines are not theoretical. They are a daily practice, or ascesis. This is where the modern concept of 1% daily improvement finds its ancient roots. The iron mind is not built in a single day of intense effort. It is forged through the accumulation of small, consistent, daily practices. It's about making a slightly better choice today than you did yesterday. This is how you systematically rewire the neural pathways of the familiarity trap. And one of the most powerful practices for this is voluntary discomfort. The Stoics, from Seneca sleeping on a hard floor to Cato wearing unconventional clothes, intentionally introduced small, manageable hardships into their lives. Why? To train their resilience for the large, involuntary hardships that life inevitably delivers. It's like a vaccine for adversity. By choosing a small discomfort, you prove to your mind that you are not a fragile creature who needs constant comfort. You are an adaptable, resilient being who can endure. Take a cold shower for 30 seconds. Skip a meal and feel the pangs of hunger. Intentionally choose the stairs. These are not acts of self-punishment, they are acts of self-fortification. What small discomfort can you voluntarily embrace today to train your resilience for the trials of tomorrow? Pick one of these Stoic disciplines, desire, action, or assent, to be your primary focus for this week. Understanding the philosophy is the map. Now, we must walk the path. A framework is useless without a protocol, a clear, actionable sequence to implement it. Here is a 4-step protocol to begin the process of breaking free, built upon the Stoic principles we've discussed. This is how you move from theory to transformation. First, acknowledge your barriers without judgment. The first step is always awareness. You must observe the workings of your own mind as a detached scientist, not a harsh critic. When you find yourself falling into an old habit, telling yourself you're not the type of person or procrastinating in search of a perfect plan. The goal is not to beat yourself up. Self-flagellation is just another form of indulgence. It makes you the center of the drama. Instead, simply acknowledge it. Ah, there is my mind, defaulting to the familiar path again. Interesting. Or, there is the old identity story, trying to protect me from discomfort. I see it. This non-judgmental awareness, a core part of the discipline of assent, creates a space between the impulse and your reaction. In that space lies your freedom to choose a different path. Second, create micro-change momentum. You do not break down a prison wall with a single swing of a sledgehammer. You do it by loosening one brick at a time. The modern habit formation research on tiny habits perfectly mirrors this ancient wisdom. Your first step should be so absurdly small that it is virtually impossible to fail. If you want to start meditating, don't commit to 30 minutes. Commit to sitting on a cushion and taking one conscious breath. 1. If you want to start a fitness routine, don't commit to an hour at the gym. Commit to putting on your workout clothes. That's it. When I started my own recovery, my first meditation was literally pausing for 3 seconds before I checked my email in the morning. The goal is not the initial result. The goal is to build the identity of a person who shows up. These tiny wins are the neurological kindling that starts the fire of real change. Third, institute a practice of Stoic reflection. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations was not a book he wrote for posterity. It was his private journal, a tool for self-examination. This is the most crucial practice for maintaining perspective. Every evening, take 5 minutes with a journal. Ask yourself 3 simple questions. 1. Where did I act in accordance with my principles today? 2. Where did my judgments or emotions get the better of me? 3. How can I approach tomorrow with more wisdom and self-command? This is not about listing achievements. It is a humble, honest audit of your inner world. It reinforces your learning, corrects your course, and ensures that you are not just blindly repeating the same mistakes. Fourth, and finally, build an accountability system. The Stoics had their schools, their mentors, and their communities. We are not designed to undertake this journey alone. In the modern world, this means finding a partner, a mentor, or a community that holds you to a higher standard. Share your micro-change with one person you trust, not for them to police you, but for you to borrow their resolve until your own is unbreakable. Declaring your intention to another person makes it real. It raises the stakes just enough to pull you forward on the days when your own motivation wanes. So let's begin now. Declare your first, absurdly small micro-change in the comments below. Let this community be your first accountability system. We have journeyed through the architecture of our self-imposed prisons, the gilded cage of comfort, the neurological ruts of the familiarity trap, the vigilant warden of our identity protection mechanism, and the silent saboteur of perfectionism paralysis. But more importantly, we have uncovered the timeless keys to our own liberation, the Stoic Breakthrough Framework. By mastering the discipline of desire, we learn to want what is, not what we wish were so. Through the discipline of action, we focus on our next right step, regardless of outcome. And with the discipline of assent, we learn to see the world clearly, free from the distortions of fear and ego. Change is not a singular, dramatic event. It is a process. It is the quiet, daily, and sometimes tedious work of installing a new operating system in your mind. It is choosing the compass over the map, committing to the process over the prize. The 4-step protocol, acknowledging without judgment, creating micro-change momentum, stoic reflection, and building accountability, is not a quick fix. It is a practical blueprint for a lifetime of growth. It is how you stop being a reactor to the chaos of the world and start becoming the deliberate creator of your own internal fortitude. The iron mind is not something you are born with. It is something you build, one conscious choice at a time. Your journey does not end with this video. It begins. If you are serious about forging this inner strength and want to continue this practice with me, subscribe to this channel for your weekly training in mental resilience and applied Stoic wisdom. To aid you in your daily practice, I've created a free resource, the Iron Mind Daily Reflection Journal, modeled on the principles we discussed today. You can download it using the link in the description below. Now, I want you to continue the work in our community. Share in the comments. What is your single biggest psychological barrier to change? By naming it, you take away its power, and be sure to join me for our next video, where we will undertake the 30-day Stoic challenge that rewires your brain, turning these principles into a powerful, transformative experience. The choice, as always, is yours. Will you remain in the comfort of the cell, or will you take the first imperfect step toward freedom?